We dive into a full game preview of the Baltimore Ravens Week 2 matchup with the Miami Dolphins with a very special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we return here with another episode of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much for tuning in here today with us, making Locked On Ravens your first listen to the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. That includes over in video form on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is who covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. And we're back, our second Purple Friday of the 2022 season. The Ravens 1-0 after their 24-9 victory over the New York Jets. And here to break down the Ravens Week 2 matchup with us against the Miami Dolphins is former Baltimore Ravens wide receiver and Super Bowl champion Qadry Ismail. And Q, it's great to have you back on the show here. Baltimore started off their season strong with a win. Hopefully they can make it 2 straight here against the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I tell you what, Kevin, what a start. I mean, you talk about a team that didn't play in the preseason, most of their starters. You look at the way in which this Jets game, as far as the emotion of it with 9/11, the weather had a certain factor to it too. It started, raining right as, we're out there doing my TV show, and you just see all the inclement kind of pick up as kickoff started off, but at the end of it all, Lamar Jackson, once he shook off the rust and once the team started getting into their groove, just what a performance. What a performance all the way around, and defensively, what a performance as well.
Yeah, and there were multiple positive takeaways from this game. Some things that obviously they have to clean up as well, the run game being one of those. But look, this is a game that started off pretty sloppily for the Ravens. It wasn't a strong start for them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. The weather wasn't great to start off. The Jets started to stack the box and really eliminate Baltimore's ground game. But as the game went on, you saw the Ravens be able to beat the Jets deep with Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay a couple times on the defensive side of the ball. It was domination all across the field. Joe Flacco running for his life for the majority of the game. The Ravens' third down defense was phenomenal as well. Who were some of the standouts? What were some of your biggest takeaways from that game?
Yeah, so I just think defensively is where you got to start. Matabike, just incredible game. The way he was able to push the pocket. We all know Joe Flacco from his days here in Baltimore. He has a big arm, big body guy too, and doesn't shy away from standing in the pocket making throws. I mean, that's what made him, a household legend here and what rode this team to victory in Super Bowl 47. Now, all that being said, with his push into the pocket, Joe wasn't able to really step into any throws. I thought also, you look at the defensive line, just the way in which Justin Houston was able to take advantage of the Jets and their makeshift offensive line. I just thought that was just such a vet move, and the way he played was very inspiring also. But Patrick Queen, a guy who I think I've been critical of at times. I know on this show we've talked about him taking those necessary next steps and doing so with great confidence. I know that they tried to few times isolate him in the passing game, but yeah, what a game. I just thought all the way around, defensively is where things were. And as you said, offensively, Duvernay stepped up. The man has to give his flowers, and I'm ready to give them. I saw them in pregame warm-up, both him and Bateman and Prochet. And, it was interesting because Duvernay, he kind of went out there and he was doing his thing, and I was like, all right, cool. I'm curious to see how his game's going to unfold. And, the man-to-man out of the bunch formation, the takeoff route that he took an angle on with the defender and stacking on top of him and then snatching the ball out of the air with just such the finest margin of detail. To pull it down for Lamar was phenomenal. They needed that. To come back on just what I thought was a beautiful designed route combination, And for Lamar to see him in the back of the end zone and how in which that play unfolded, that was awesome. That was special. I think, just, you look at guys and seeing whether or not they're going to step up and who is going to step up. He was accepting of the challenge, and what a phenomenal job. So, I just think overall, the team has a lot more, I think, left to give and to grow from with this offensively. But make no mistake about it, man, they're off to a great start. And Lamar Jackson, once again, what does he do? He just goes out there and he wins. That's who Lamar is.
It is, and the Ravens now 1-0 for their last 5 Week 1 wins. Have been in pretty dominant fashion overall. You kind of take out that Raiders game in Week 1 of last year, and they've outscored their opponents by, can't even remember the exact margin, but it's a lot to a little. I'll say that much. But Q, while the Ravens did have a dominant win here, they did not get out unscathed. They did lose 2 players to season-ending injuries in both Juwan James and Kyle Fuller. And I mean, look, I really do feel for both guys. Both guys were working hard. Both had something to prove also. James has had his career marred by injuries, a lot of missed time for him. This is another injury. And for Kyle Fuller, someone who didn't have the strongest football year last year for the Denver Broncos and was looking to play a pretty big role on this Baltimore defense. And I thought, after hearing some up and downs in training camp, it kind of settled down a little bit and had really started to come on. And I think now you're losing depth at positions where, look, Baltimore, I think, stacked up well at the cornerback position and the offensive line position, but you're losing some of your top, for the Ravens, top backup in Juwan James for the tackle spot, key depth in Kyle Fuller. So where are you with those two positions, especially, and as we'll get to, with the Ravens secondary in the cornerback position picking up some other injuries?
Yeah, I thought it was tough that, they went down and how they went down, obviously Achilles and ACL. I'm familiar with the Achilles. I know, again, from an ACL standpoint, there was contact on this one, so it wasn't necessarily non-contact. I saw how his foot planted in the ground. You know me, I'm a trainer as far as sports performance, human movement. So I don't want to just say, oh, I'm a trainer, and a more human performance movement coach. And I think from that, you could see where, his heel locked into the ground, and more bad things happen than good when your foot is stuck in the ground. And so I know overall it's a tough one for him, for Kyle Fuller. I just think, man, if there was a way to show how you can train and avoid, trying to worry about the catastrophic injury and at least limit some of the probability of it, I wish that could be a conversation to take place. But all that being said, I think Eric DeCosta recognizes that, injuries are going to happen, and he and his staff have to be ready to see the bigger picture. What is that? Making sure that who's out there and who's able to come in and really not take too significant of a step back as far as who you're going to have go out there and fill in. I mean, that's just unfortunate, but that's the nature of the beast. The next man up, and let's see how he looks.
Yeah, and this is football. Injuries do happen, and you're right. The Ravens better prepared themselves this offseason to go through those injuries. I know last year we were talking about the offensive tackle position and how little depth they had there, and it was pretty much betting on the health of Ronnie Stanley, and Stanley only plays in the one game. I think they better prepared themselves corner-wise. We will, again, talk about this, but the Ravens picking up a couple other injuries. We'll see if guys like Marcus Peters are able to come back and play in this game. Marlon Humphrey, Brandon Stevens on the injury report as well. So we'll see. It's a wait-and-see factor, but again, very, very unfortunate for Juwan James and Kyle Fuller. My thoughts do go out to both there. We'll head into our first break here, though. Coming up on Locked On Ravens, we'll be diving into our first part of our game preview of this Week 2 matchup with the Miami Dolphins, talking about the offensive side of the ball for Baltimore going up against that Miami defense. So be sure to stay tuned. We still have a ton to get to on Locked On Ravens. But first, I do want to tell you a bit about Turo. And Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want wherever you want it from a community of local hosts. You can browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., Canada, and the UK. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for special events, birthdays, or even holidays. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget. Doesn't just need to get from point A to point B. You can test drive in a new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is back-end by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Ditch the boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. We're back here with our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Ostreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. Again, thank you so much for making Locked On Ravens your first listen of the day. If you want to support the show, be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along with us in audio form as well. But Q, big matchup for the Ravens against the Dolphins here in week 2, a game that, people have revenge on their minds, it looks like, after that 2021 game, a 2022 game now to get that back, a 22-10 loss in week 10? Yeah, week 10 of 2021, where the Dolphins just blitzed and blitzed and blitzed, and it was pressure, and the Ravens offense had no answer. Now, the Ravens defense played well in that game. They didn't allow a touchdown until I believe the final 2 minutes or 1 minute, but the Ravens on third down, a very rough 2 of 14. How do you think the Ravens are preparing for this game? We've heard how they've watched a lot of film on what the Dolphins did in 2021 to kind of combat that. But if the Dolphins go with the blitz-heavy approach against Lamar Jackson in this offense, Q, how do you think they combat it this time around?
So it's interesting because if you listen to Greg Roman talk, he made the point that it was one of those cases where things did kind of get away from them and it snowballed. Snowballed and how? Well, when you do have the third down production of 2 of 14, how did you get to that? They had a lot of third and longs. I honestly look at it this way. Anytime there's zero coverage, all you need to do is hit it, once, maybe twice. Usually is a huge play for the offense, and defensive coordinators will be scared away from, going back to it. We saw a team that once you saw a weakness and blood in the water, they just went after pretty much Lamar Jackson and company. They talked about it being a Thursday night game. I don't think he was trying to look for an excuse, but I think he was trying to see some of the things that could have, been spoken about. And the one thing that was spoken about was the fact that short week, you don't really get, too much chemistry. Things just kind of come about, and so be it. So I just thought it was interesting how it unfolded when it came to what they felt that they could or could not do with, the short week and the game planning. So revenge is definitely on everyone's mind. But if I'm a wide receiver, you know what? I am making sure I hone in big time on, being patient with my routes, getting my depth, and, the releases off the line of scrimmage. If I get by the guy, I mean, it's a home run. And, Sammy Watkins last year, in my mind, I think he unfortunately set a negative tone because Lamar hit him in the back of the end zone. And, I know we talked about it. It was like, well, wait a minute. Did he stop? Did he speed up? What was it? Because it looked awkward. It looked like he should have scored versus that zero coverage, that all-out blitz look. And that, to me, I don't think they ever recovered from that particular play, the rest of the year. I just think that this is a game in which there is a level of redemption and handling the blitz and seeing what the receiving core can do. I mean, Devin Duvernay jumped out to a strong start. You want an encore? You want to put your name on the map? Boom, this is it. There's some opportunities there that the receivers are going to have, and you just got to have to step up and make it possible.
Yeah, and let's talk about those receivers a little bit, Q, because I feel like let's just go pass catchers in general, because I think it's not going to just be the wide receivers that have to make an impact. It's going to be the tight ends like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, the running backs even. I mean, you talk about hopefully a return for J.K. Dobbins in this game. He logged his second full practice on Thursday. It's a very good sign for his availability on Sunday. Kenyon Drake, Mike Davis, Justice Hill, etc. I think a way that the Ravens can combat the cover zero, the blitzing, is in the screen game, in the short pass game, and being able to get the ball out quickly against maybe 5, 6, 7 rushers. If you can get blockers into space against maybe 2 or 3 defensive backs out there, if everybody's sending the house at Lamar and Lamar just checks it down or gets the ball out quickly, all these guys are already into the quarterback backfield, into the offensive backfield. Whereas, there's a lot of space out in front to run. Also, I think the deep passing game, establishing a tone there, play action will be something to keep in mind as well. I know play action might be a little more difficult with blitzing considering how the Ravens do run it, but I think that it's still a really good point for them to just try out different things here. And I think they are better prepared this year for that. But from a receiver perspective, Hugh, I think that it's going to be important for them to really just stay true to what they believe in here and make sure that they don't deviate from their game plan, because then things, you start to scramble a little bit, start to second guess yourself, and all of a sudden everything comes out of whack. Now, if you need to make adjustments have to be made. That's a different story. But how do you think Baltimore with their receivers, and we saw the big plays with Devin Duvernay, the big plays with Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews getting involved, how do you feel like these receivers and pass catchers have to step up against the Miami secondary that has Xavier Howard, Javon Holland, and so much talent?
They do have that talent out there, and that's why they feel confident putting guys out on an island and daring you to throw the ball. They know, hey man, we can cover on the back end, and we feel really good about getting to your quarterback before he really can get into any kind of rhythm. The quick game is going to be important. I think the quick game, you got guys especially when it's zero coverage like that, and that strong form of man-to-man, they're not trying to get beat deep. So there's going to be a little bit of opportunity there. But more than anything, with the quick game, it's the short tackling. So to avoid the short tackling, you're going to have to make guys miss at the line of scrimmage. Once you make guys miss, it's snatching the ball and it's going. This is what the Lamar Jackson factor was supposed to be about. You know what? We need to commit an extra guy to the box. If we have the extra guy in the tackle box, that means there's freedom on the outside. If there's freedom on the outside, there's opportunities for the big play to come about. Let it happen. Those are some strategies in my mind. Yeah, when you talk about the different pass catchers, you're right. If it's Kenyon Drake coming out of the backfield, he has some really soft hands. I think he has an opportunity to be a good, strong asset to what they like to do. And if JK is ready after another full participation, week of practice, and he feels like, hey, you know what, my leg is held up, then let's go, let's do it. So lot of strategies, a lot of details that I think go into making an offense, regardless of what you throw at it, efficient. And I honestly think that this will really be an opportunity for guys to step up and show what they're all about.
Yeah, and let's talk about the injury report a little bit from an offensive perspective. You mentioned J.K. Dobbins, and then obviously the run game was not up to par against the Jets in week 1. 3 yards per carry. You had Kenyon Drake and Lamar Jackson average each 2.8 on the ground. Kenyon Drake 11 for 31, Lamar Jackson 6 for 17. Mike Davis had the longest run of the day for them at 10 yards, but he fumbled the ball on it. So it wasn't a great day for the run game. Dobbins, you mentioned it, Wednesday and Thursday, logged both full participations in practice. Ronnie Stanley's participation a little different, limited on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. And you have Nick Boyle on Thursday that did not practice due to rest on offense. James Prochet went from limited on Wednesday to did not practice on Thursday. Patrick Ricard, 2 straight non-participation days. So maybe we see Ben Mason in this game. I mean, what was your overall takeaway from the injury report through Wednesday and Thursday, especially surrounding J.K. Dobbins and Ronnie Stanley?
Yeah, just real quickly, I think it was interesting with the type of injuries. James Prochet with his groin. That is just something where I think soft tissue-wise and training-wise, again, heals down. It's a recipe for those little knick-knack injuries. I think when it comes to JK, I hope and pray that he does feel confident and comfortable, and he's out there. That to me, I think is everything. When I look at what we saw with Ronnie Stanley, only he knows. It's interesting. I love how, John put it. He goes, part of guys coming back, it's not just, hey, here are the metrics, you're back and you should be fine. What also comes into play is how does that guy feel? Like, do you feel good? Do you feel strong? Do you feel like, hey man, it doesn't matter. Like, put me out there. Let's do this. I think those are all important things to look at and to examine, because honestly, uh, at some point he's going to come back, and I just want him to be ready. I just think, part of the 31 yards, 61 yards, and really pedestrian numbers by an explosive or potentially explosive Ravens running game, it comes down to the guys up front. It comes down to blocking and talent and all the things. That to me is everything. So a lot of work left. A lot of work left for sure to get the run game on point. But a lot of that work comes from hopefully guys being healthy, in particular Ronnie Stanley. I think even Nick Boyle, hopefully, they talked about, who's up and who's not. And I know Oliver was up over Nick Boyle in a Jets game. And, John Harbaugh felt his reasoning was, hey, you know what? This guy's more the healthier choice of the two. But there's something when you have a healthy Nick Boyle, a little nastiness to his game. I think all of the way in which, the horses, if you will, of bully ball are good. Nick Boyle's one of them. I think that's when you see dominant running action, which sets everything else up.
Yeah, so I would anticipate J.K. Dobbins playing in this one, assuming nothing bad happens on Friday today. So you're looking at that. Ronnie Stanley, I wouldn't anticipate him playing in this game unless we see maybe a full practice here today. But I think that's right along where my timeline was anyway for him. I had him right around week 3, week 4. So I think if we get to the past the first month of the year and Ronnie Stanley hasn't played, then you're kind of thinking, oh, what's going on with this? But you never really know. I think that unless Patrick Ricard can log at least a limited participation today, he's probably not playing in this game. James Prochet, you want to be careful with those groin injuries. So who knows? But there are also injuries on the defensive side of the ball, Q. We'll be talking about those coming up in our final segment and how this Ravens defense matches up with Tua Tagovailoa and that Dolphins offense. So be sure to stay tuned for that. We still have a ton to talk about here on Locked On Ravens. First, though, I do want to tell you a bit about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. You can find all the latest football league developments, game matchups, news, and podcasts, including this year's opening week games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Is the fastest and easiest way to check out on all your favorite sports and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. As the website let you use a mobile device to learn more about the trends in action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. We're back here with our final segment of Locked On Ravens here on Purple Friday. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with Qadry Ismail. Again, thank you so much for tuning into the show today, making us your first listen of the day. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, follow along with us in audio form as well. Q, we talked a bit about the injuries to the offensive side of the ball through Wednesday and Thursday, that injury report. Now moving over to defense, you have Marcus Peters logging his first full participation practice on Thursday after a limited session on Wednesday. That is a good sign. Speaking of good signs, Travis Jones went from limited on Wednesday to full on Thursday. So that'll be huge for an already dominant defensive line and my favorite position on the roster to get back a player like Travis Jones. Now, Marlon Humphrey was added to the injury report after practicing on Wednesday. He was limited on Thursday. Brandon Stevens was a limited participation guy on Wednesday, ended up not practicing on Thursday. So some injuries in that secondary queue, but you do have the positive news with Marcus Peters. But what do you make of the injuries to Marlon Humphrey and Brandon Stevens, and how would that impact the game plan if either of those guys weren't able to go?
Yeah, Brandon's injury, I think, is more of a concern because of, his versatility. I think also, Marlon, it's more, I have a feeling it's more precautionary than anything. This is going to be a huge test for the Ravens secondary with Waddle and Tyreek Hill. Arguably two of the fastest guys in the league when it comes to stretching the field. Marcus Peters, I saw him in New York, and dude was looking good. He was running the stairs in MetLife Stadium in pregame. And for him to, do that, I know game day. Obviously, you're want to go out there and the juices are flowing and all that. But man, to see him out running the way he was running, it doesn't surprise me that he's a full participation. And I'm hoping and praying that we see him out and ready to do his thing. So yeah, Travis Jones. The rich just got richer, and that D line that is, boiling over with a lot of talent. It'll be good to see if Travis Jones can make an appearance and get after the running game and Tua Tagovailoa and force that pocket to collapse and him get rid of the ball and hopefully inaccurately. And Marcus Williams yet again. Let's see his swagger again for another week and getting some interceptions.
Yeah, and you mentioned too, I think part of this game for the Ravens, at least on defense and stopping this Dolphins offense, I think it's going to be forcing him to get the ball out quickly. I think when you talk about guys like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, you want to limit their abilities deep. And part of that is being able to, one, provide the necessary help over the top. With two speedsters like that, the way the Dolphins have built this offense, it can sometimes be hard. I mean, it's hard to keep the ball out of players' hands who are talented like Hill and like Waddle. But if you can force the Dolphins, it's almost like the bend don't break stuff we were talking about so much last year, Q, where if you give up some short stuff between the 20s and tighten up in the red zone and force the Dolphins to kick the football, that's better than allowing a 65-yard touchdown to Tyreek Hill where you try to do a little too much and then all of a sudden this happens. We saw a great performance by Mike McDonald in week 1. The Ravens defensive coordinator calling a great game. The Ravens getting pressure on Joe Flacco. The Dolphins might be without Austin Jackson, Teron Armstead, still to be seen on both those fronts. But if they're down those guys, we could see another very high-pressure game for the Ravens. So, Q, do you think a key in this game is getting pressure on Tua and forcing him to get the ball out early?
I mean, it is, and it's interesting because McDaniel was brought in as a head coach because of his offensive acumen. I think – again, the challenge is going to be there. No question about it. They run that Gary Kubiak, Mike Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan offense. That's what McDaniel was brought up on when he was just in Denver, as Shannon Sharp would fondly say on his show. Oh, he was just a guy in the locker room. He was one of the assistants to the assistant. But here he is now. He's a head coach. So I think more than anything, it's the way in which they run their offense and kind of get you off of your aggressive style of play with some counteractions. And that's what concerns me because I think this can fit Tua as far as getting outside the pocket and being mobile. Setting the edge is going to be of an essence coming into this game. If you don't get a chance to set the edge and he gets to the outside, I don't care what cornerback you have, you can have the best of the best, and it's difficult to cover guys the likes of Jalen and Tyreek. I mean, those dudes can flat out fly. So containing Tua, limiting the run game, and if you can handle it with your up front guys, man, I mean, that means in your back end you got extra safety help. I think that bodes well for what Mike McDonald is trying to do for his defense.
Yeah, having Marcus Williams, I think, is a big plus, especially for a team that has lacked that true back-end presence since what Earl Thomas was able to provide them on the field in 2019. He had a great year for them on the field. And was someone who quarterbacks did not throw at a lot. They respected Earl Thomas in that defensive backfield. I think for Marcus Williams, already has an interception, has already made his presence felt. You have to account for that if you're a quarterback and not go into this game thinking, oh, we can just beat the Ravens deep because they now have the players in the secondary, which was a very big weakness for them last year. They have restocked that. Now, hopefully guys like Humphrey and Stevens and Peters obviously can play in this game and add to that cornerback room. But Q, I think this is a game that's going to be a good one. Very close in my opinion, at least personally. How do you see this one shaping up? Is this a game where Baltimore goes 2-0 or do you see them falling to 1-1?
Yeah, I can easily see it go 2-0. This is a home game. Lamar Jackson is back healthy. Receivers did step up. I think there's going to be a Mark Andrew explosion. I think Isaiah Likely, who had an off game, was going to recognize the consistency of mentally being in each week and not just thinking that you can just show up and play. Not saying that he wasn't ready, but clearly the proof was in the pudding. You got to make plays for your quarterback. Defensively, like it just feels like that swagger is back. And I just think that this is going to be a big test. I think this is a positive test for this defensive front. And you talked about it. Travis Jones being back is a really good, healthy rotation. So, I think the pieces are in place. And you got Justin Tucker on your side. They don't. Jordan Stout, in my mind, he did his thing. Come on now. I think overall, at home, this is a game in which you should be favored and you should handle your business and get it done with a victory.
Yep, I'm going 23-21, the Justin Tucker effect in full swing for this team. You got a close game. I'm picking Justin Tucker to win it for the Ravens. So I'm going with that. Big shout out also to the 2020 draft class. Patrick Queen, Justin Madubuike. Hopefully J.K. Dobbins able to play. Broderick Washington had a great game against the Jets in week 1. The defensive line, again, just so stacked with veteran talent, youth talent. And if Travis Jones is able to play in this game, I think it'll be big. So I think this is going to be a good game. I think that it'll be more of a defensive battle than some people might anticipate, but there is the chance for an offensive explosion. So it could go either way in that regard too. But Q, I appreciate you hopping on me. Thank you so much for joining me. And hopefully when we're back here next week, we'll be talking about that 2-0 Ravens team going up against the New England Patriots.
I don't care what, who, when, why, and how. We can look forward, and looking forward, man, I hope they drop 60 up on the Patriots and show Bill Belichick that without Tom Brady, you're just another coach.
Yeah, the Ravens and Patriots rivalry spans many, many, many years. Wins by the Ravens, wins by the Patriots. I'm excited for that game, but the Ravens do have to take care of business against the Miami Dolphins first. And again, what I think will be a very, very good game. But that's all we have here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. When we get back here on Monday, we'll be diving into a full game recap of what happened in that Ravens and Dolphins Week 2 matchup. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I will see you back here on Monday.